This is part 2 of Alice in Wonderland. When Alice saw the March Hare's house with its chimneys shaped like ears, she quickly ate a little more mushroom to make herself taller. Under a tree was a long table where the March Hare and the Hatter were sitting at one end having tea. They were resting their elbows on a dormouse that was fast asleep. "No room, no room," they cried as they saw Alice coming. "There's plenty of room," said Alice indignantly, and she sat down in an armchair. The Hatter stared at her. "Your hair needs cutting," he said. "You shouldn't make personal remarks," said Alice. "It's rude." The Hatter's eyes opened even wider. "What's the difference between a raven and a writing desk?" he asked as he took out his watch and held it to his ear. "And what's the date today?" "The 4th, said Alice. "Bother, 2 days wrong. I knew butter wouldn't fix it." "It was the best butter," the hare said quietly. "But it had crumbs in it," moaned the Hatter. The hare reached for the watch and dipped it in his tea. "The dormouse is asleep again," said the Hatter, pouring a little tea on its nose. Of course," murmured the dormouse. "Can you answer the riddle yet?" the Hatter asked Alice. "No," replied Alice wearily. "I give up. What is the answer?" "I haven't the slightest idea," said the Hatter. "Twinkle, twinkle, little bat," the Hatter was singing. "How I wonder what you're at," he continued. "Do you know it?" he asked. "I've heard something like it," said Alice. "It goes on, up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky." "When I sang it to the Queen, she threatened to cut my head off," he said sadly. "She said I wasn't keeping time, and it's true, time never works for me, so now we let it stay at 6 o'clock. "So it's always tea time?" asked Alice brightly. "Yes," sighed the Hatter, "and no time for washing up, so you keep moving around the places." Alice guessed. "Exactly," said the Hatter. "But what happens when you get to the beginning again?" said Alice. The March Hare yawned. "Let's change the subject. I vote the young lady tells us a story." "I'm afraid I don't know any," said Alice. "Then the Dormouse will." The Hare and the Hatter cried, pinching him fiercely. The Dormouse gasped. There were 3 little sisters who lived in a well. "What did they eat?" asked Alice. "Treacle," replied the Dormouse, "and they were very ill. They were learning to draw everything that begins with M." "But why M?" asked Alice. "Why not?" said the March Hare. "Time to move round," announced the Hatter. They drew mousetraps and the moon. The Dormouse continued, "And memory and muchness. You know how you say things are much of a muchness. Have you seen a drawing of a muchness?" Began Alice, more confused than ever. "I don't think—" "Then you shouldn't speak," snarled the Hatter. That was enough for Alice. She got up and walked away. Nobody seemed to notice or care, as she'd half hoped they would. The last thing she saw was the Hatter and the March Hare trying to stuff the Dormouse into the teapot. "That was the stupidest party I've ever been to," she said to herself. Just as she said it, she noticed a little door in one of the trees. "That's very curious," she thought, "but everything's curious today." And in she went. Once more Alice found herself in the long hall close to the glass table. First she picked up the key and unlocked the door to the garden. She was determined to get it right this time. Then she nibbled at the piece of mushroom she'd saved until she became just small enough. At long last she walked down the passage and through the door into the beautiful garden full of bright flower beds and cool fountains. A rose tree with white roses stood near the entrance. 3 gardeners were busy painting the roses red at great speed. "Would you tell me," said Alice, "why you are doing that?" They all looked terrified, but one of them explained. "We were meant to plant red ones. If the Queen finds out, she'll cut off our heads." Then all three threw themselves to the ground, face down, as a magnificent procession approached. Alice wasn't sure if she meant to lie down beside them, but decided not to. "Who is this?" the Queen of Hearts roared. My name is Alice, Your Majesty," Alice said politely, but she thought, "They're only a pack of cards, nothing to be scared of." "And who are these?" The Queen pointed at the gardeners. "How should I know?" Alice answered. The Queen went bright red with anger and screamed, "Off with her head!" "Nonsense," said Alice, and the Queen was silent until she saw what the gardeners had done. "Off with their head!" she cried. Then the procession moved on. "You won't be beheaded," Alice assured the gardeners. She quickly hid them in the flower pot and followed the Queen. "Get to your places," the Queen bellowed with a voice like thunder, and people began running about in all directions. Alice thought she'd never seen such a peculiar croquet pitch in her whole life. life. The pitch was covered in lumps and bumps, and the hoops were soldiers bent double. Now and then they wandered off, as did the hedgehogs that were meant to be balls. The mallets were live flamingos, which were impossible to aim properly. Every time Alice tried, hers would twist itself round and look at her oddly, which made Alice giggle. The players all played when they liked, and the Queen, in a furious rage, was stomping about, yelling, "Off with their heads!" Alice felt extremely nervous, but to her relief, the Cheshire Cat appeared. "Now I've got someone to talk to," she thought, but when the King suggested it, kiss his hand, the cat said, "I'd rather not," which set the Queen off again. "Off with his head," she screeched. Only his head was visible, so nobody knew how this could be done. Alice was astonished when the Duchess took her arm and said, "I'm glad to see you again, you dear old thing." But then the Queen roared, "Either you or your head must be off," and the Duchess rushed away. The Queen turned to Alice. "Have you seen the Mock Turtle yet?" "No," said Alice. "I don't even know what a mock turtle is." "It's the thing mock turtle soup's made from," said the Queen. "He'll tell you his story. Come on." But they first met a griffin lying asleep in the sun. "Up you get, you lazy thing, and take this girl to meet the mock turtle," ordered the Queen. "What fun," said the griffin as it rubbed its eyes. "Why fun?" asked Alice. "Oh, her. It's all fantasy, you know. They never do execute anyone," laughed the griffin. "Come on." "I've never been so bossed about," thought Alice. Far along the beach they met the mock turtle, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of rock. His eyes were full of tears, and between sobs he told his story. "We went to school in the sea. Our teacher was a turtle, but we called him a tortoise." "Why tortoise?" asked Alice. "Because he taught us," snapped the mock turtle. "We learnt reeling and writhing, ambition, distraction, uglification and derision, and mystery." "Wow," said Alice. "How many hours a day were your lessons?" 10 hours the first day, 9 the next, and so on," said the mock turtle. "That's why they're called lessons," explained the griffin. "They lesson each day." "As you've never lived below sea," went on the mock turtle, "you can't know how brilliant a lobster quadrille is." Alice shook her head. "Make 2 lines," cried the mock turtle. "Seals, turtles, salmon and so on. Clear away the jellyfish, and you through all the lobsters." The griffin leapt up as he spoke, far out to sea. The mock turtle was skipping about. "Swim after them and do a somersault," he shrieked. "Then swap lobsters," yelled the griffin. "And back to land," groaned the mock turtle, and both creatures slumped on the sand, looking at Alice sadly. "Nice," said Alice quietly. "Let's do it." The creatures cried and leapt up again. They danced round Alice in a figure of 8 while the mock turtle sang a gloomy song about a fish called a whiting. "S'pose you've seen a whiting?" asked the mock turtle. "Oh yes," said Alice. She stopped herself quickly. "I don't know where Din is, but you know what they're like," said the mock turtle. "Good for cleaning white shoes." "Now let's hear some of your adventures," the griffin said to Alice. Alice wasn't sure how to begin. "Well," she said, "there's no point in thinking of yesterday because I was someone else then." It was alarming the way the creatures kept moving in, closer and closer, opening their mouths very wide, but finally, after many attempts at reciting various poems, the mock turtle remembered his favourite, which he began in a voice choked with sobs. "Beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen, who for such dainties would not stop, soup of the evening, beautiful soup, soup of the evening, beautiful soup, beautiful soup, beautiful soup, soup of the evening, beautiful, beautiful soup." The mock turtle was about to go on when they heard a cry in the distance. "The trial's beginning. Come on," cried the griffin as he grabbed Alice's hand. They ran until they came to the courtroom where the King and Queen of Hearts and a great crowd of birds and animals and the whole pack of cards were waiting. The King was the judge. The knaves stood before him in chains, and the 12 jurors were busy writing their names on slates. Bill the lizard had a squeaky pencil, which Alice couldn't stand, so she took it from him and he went on writing with his finger. Alice gazed at the huge plate of tarts in the middle of the room. Then the White Rabbit blew his trumpet. "Silence in court," he cried before reading from the scroll. "The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts all on a summer's day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away." "Call the first witness," said the King to the White Rabbit. First witness called the rabbit. This was the Mad Hatter. He held a cup of tea in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. Take off your hat, said the king. It isn't mine, replied the Hatter nervously. Stolen? Exclaimed the king. The jury began writing notes furiously. No, I sell them, said the Hatter, shaking with fright. I'm a hatter. Then he took a large bite out of his teacup instead of the bread and butter. When the Hatter mentioned the March Hare in his evidence, the hare denied everything vigorously, and the king eventually told him to stand down. And just take off his head outside, said the queen to the officers, but the Hatter was already out of sight. Alice, meanwhile, had suddenly started growing. Stop squeezing, complained the Dormouse. You've got no right to grow in here. And the next witness was the Duchess's cook. She was holding a pepper pot and everyone began sneezing. Give your evidence, demanded the king. Shan't, replied the cook. The king looked anxiously at the White Rabbit, who hissed, Go on. What are the tarts made of? The king continued. Pepper, said the cook. Treacle, said the Dormouse sleepily. Off with his whiskers, shrieked the queen. For some minutes the whole courtroom was in confusion. Never mind, said the king. Call the next witness. The White Rabbit looked at his list, then he called out, Alice. Alice jumped up, forgetting how large she'd grown, and tipped over the jury box. Oh, I'm sorry, she said, and began to put them all back in their places. She put Bill in upside down by mistake and turned him the right way up again. Not that it'll be any more useful, she thought. Silence! Rule 42, the king shouted, staring at Alice. All those more than a kilometre high must leave court. I'm not a kilometre high, said Alice. Nearly 2 kilometres high, said the queen, throwing an ink pot at Bill. Let the jury consider their verdict, said the king. No, sentence first, verdict after, cried the queen. Rubbish, said Alice. That's not how it works. Hold your tongue, said the queen, turning purple. I won't, said Alice. Off with her head, yelled the queen at the top of her voice. Whatever, said Alice. I'm not scared of you. You're just a pack of cards. At that, the whole pack rose up in the air like a tornado and came flying down on Alice. She tried to beat them off, half laughing, half crying. Alice, wake up! Alice opened her eyes to find her sister gently brushing fallen leaves from her face. Oh, I had such a strange dream, she said, and she told her sister all about it. When she'd finished, her sister hugged her. It sounds incredible, amazing, she said, but now you must go or you'll be late for your tea. So Alice jumped up and ran as fast as she could, thinking as she ran over and over of all the extraordinary things that had happened to her. The White Rabbit, the Hatter, the Duchess, the Caterpillar, the Queen of Hearts. So many creatures, so many things. What a wonderful dream it had been.